Our studies involve comparing the deaths of all persons in the 10 largest fluoridated cities of the United States with the 10 largest non-fluoridated cities in the United States year by year. And we obtained a very remarkable curve, which you can see here perhaps. Here is the fluoridated, and here is the non-fluoridated set of 10 cities each. Here's where the fluoridation started, and before this time, both sets of cities were identical. But no sooner had fluoridation started than this curve began to go up, the deaths began to increase, so that this effect occurs very promptly within 1, 2, or 5 years.
Now this, sir, is conclusive evidence that fluor kills because of cancer.
It is one of the most conclusive bits of scientific and biological evidence that I have come across in my 50 years in the field of cancer research.
Would this then, in your opinion, be the end of fluor in water, in drinking water?
It should be the end, and in the United States, it should so be the end by federal law known as the Delaney Amendment, which says that anything found to induce cancer in man or animals cannot be legally put into the food or drink of man or animals. This, you see, amounts to public murder on a grand scale. It is a public crime, it would be, to put fluoride in the drinking water of people.
The fluoridation of the US's water supply has been going on for over 50 years. There has never been any testing on what it actually does to the pineal gland of the brain before 1990. Let's take a look at what the pineal gland is and what it does. The pineal gland, also called the pineal body, epiphysis cerebri, epiphysis, or the third eye. It produces melatonin, a hormone that affects the modulation of wake, sleep patterns, and photoperiodic, or seasonal functions. It is and is located near to the center of the brain, between the two hemispheres, tucked in a groove where the two rounded thalamic bodies join. The pineal gland is reddish-gray, shaped like a tiny pine cone, and about the size of a pea, 8 millimeters in humans. It is often seen in plain skull X-rays, as it is often calcified. Calcification is typically due to intake of the fluoride found in water and toothpaste. Now we know it is shaped like a pine cone and is the size of a pea, and fluoride calcifies it. Let's go back to where it mentions the third eye and see what that means. The third eye, also known as the inner eye, is a mystical and esoteric concept referring, in part, to the ajna, brow, or chakra, in certain Eastern and Western spiritual traditions. It is also spoken of as the gate that leads within to inner realms and spaces of higher consciousness. In New Age spirituality, the third eye may alternately symbolize a state of enlightenment or the evocation of mental images having deeply personal spiritual or psychological significance. The third eye is often associated with visions, clairvoyance, precognition, and out-of-body experiences, and people who have allegedly developed the capacity to use their third eyes are sometimes known as seers. The true function of this mysterious gland has long been contemplated by philosophers and spiritual adepts. Ancient Greeks believed the pineal gland to be our connection to the realms of thought. Descartes called it the seat of the soul. This gland is activated by light, and it controls the various biorhythms of the body. It works in harmony with the hypothalamus gland, which directs the body's thirst, hunger, sexual desire, and the biological clock that determines our aging process. When the pineal gland awakens, one feels a pressure at the base of the brain. This pressure will often be experienced when connecting to higher frequency. A head injury can also activate the third eye. While the physiological function of the pineal gland has been unknown until recent times, mystical traditions and esoteric schools have long known this area in the middle of the brain to be the connecting link between the physical and spiritual worlds. I used to think, just how far down the foxhole do I need to go to find out exactly what it is that is being hid and what is it they want from us, when all I had to do all along was to look in the other direction, behind my eyes, in the center of my brain, to see it. It all makes perfect sense now.
Since 1994, there have been 6 studies that show adverse effects of fluoride on the brain, even at the so-called optimum level of 1 part per million. The epidemiology studies that we recommend above should make a prime effort to look at brain effects, given the national concern over attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder and autism in our children.
Let me explain my first concern, which remains my top concern. The level of fluoride in mother's milk, mother's breast milk, baby's first meal, is extremely low. It's 0.004 parts per million. That means a bottle-fed baby in a fluoridated community in the United States, where we fluoridate the water at 1 part per million, is getting 250 times higher dose of fluoride than a breastfed baby. And that is extremely disturbing. For the first half year of the baby's life, the fluoride can get into the brain. And this is not the time, in my view, and the view of many other scientists, that a baby should be exposed to fluoride at 250 times the level in mother's milk.
Many pharmaceutical drugs, and most notably psychotropic and antidepressant medications, are known to contain high amounts of fluoride compounds. Some drugs, such as Prozac, are nearly entirely composed of the substance, and this has caused quite a stir because it is added to many communities' drinking water supply. Therefore, entire populations are being mass medicated without their consent, a clear and calculated human rights violation. Amounts of fluoride can also be found in anesthetics, steroids, anti-inflammatory agents, antibiotics, antacids, appetite suppressants, antihistamines, antifungal antibiotics, and many other medications. It is also found in Teflon and many other industrial products. Because of its use in behavioral modification, it is quite apparent that those in the industry are fully aware of its implications and yet still poison and medicate the water supply without our consent. On September 20th, 1991, the FDA held a hearing to address public concern about the ill effects of taking antidepressants and psychotropic medications. Many chilling stories were presented during this hearing. However, those chosen to sit on the panel to review these testimonies were largely members of the drug companies and pharmaceutical organizations, providing a clear and present conflict of interest.
I'll ask the committee to vote on the following statement. There is credible evidence to support a conclusion that antidepressant drugs cause the emergence and/or intensification of suicidality and/or other violent behaviors. Those in favor of that statement vote yes. Those opposed to that statement, no. And Dr. Dunner has left a proxy which makes it unanimous of 10-0.
Based upon what we have learned thus far, it seems quite obvious that there are significant health risks associated with fluoride consumption. It is also quite evident that fluoride intake has an effect on the brain, mental functions, and that children are targeted at a young age. It would seem this is done so that as the brain is developing, it has some sort of permanent effect on the child which over prolonged exposure and consumption can significantly influence their lives in negative ways. It is also curious that supporters of eugenics, military men, and factions of the government and health industry were the largest influence in pushing the water fluoridation agenda. It is almost as if they knew all along that ingestion of fluoride caused considerable health problems, and is quite likely that somewhere, hidden away in some forbidden archive, studies and experimentation were done behind closed doors and out of the public's eye. In 2013, Harvard University announced it had concluded a study funded by the National Institutes of Health that children in high fluoridated areas had significantly lower IQs than children in lesser fluoridated regions. Several other studies have also been conducted attributing many other psychological, neurological, and behavioral problems with fluoride consumption. Fluoridation chemicals not only have a negative impact on animals and human beings, but there are also considerable environmental risks as well.